A hill outside the walls of Jerusalem. A Friday morning in early April, around the year 33. The hill is not tall. You could walk up it in 2 minutes. It is shaped like a skull, which is why everyone calls it that. Skull Hill, Golgotha in Aramaic, Calvary in Latin. It's just past 9 in the morning. The sky is still blue. In 3 hours, it will not be. You can smell the dust. You can smell the blood. You can hear the hammers, 3 of them, working in rhythm, the way carpenters work when they have done this many times before. 3 crosses are being raised against the sky. The 2 on the outside hold men who have killed. The one in the middle holds a man who is only ever healed. His mother is standing close enough to hear him breathe. There are soldiers below him, casting lots for his clothes. There are religious leaders walking past, shouting things they will regret for the rest of their lives. There is a crowd. There is a centurion. There are 2 thieves dying beside him, and over the next 6 hours, before his body finally goes still, this man bleeding from his head, his back, his hands, his feet, will speak exactly 7 sentences. 7. Most Christians can name 2 of them, maybe 3. Almost nobody knows the order, and order is everything. Because each one of those 7 sentences was directed at a different person, each one opened a different door. Each one was meant for someone specific, and by the time we are done, you will understand that one of them was meant for you. But here is the part nobody tells you. There were 7 sentences, 7. But one of them was not spoken to his mother, not to the thief beside him, not to the soldiers below, not even to his father. One of these 7 sentences was spoken to something else entirely. We will get to that, but not yet. Because this is not a story about a crucifixion. This is not a story about a Roman execution. This is not a story about an unfair trial. This is a story about 7 sentences spoken by a dying man and what each one was for. So, sit down, get quiet. We are about to walk through the longest 6 hours in human history, one word at a time. Starting with the first thing he said before the nails were even finished going in. The first thing he said was not what you would expect a dying man to say. Most dying men curse. The Romans counted on it. That was part of the design of crucifixion, to break a man so completely that his last words would be screams, and the crowd would walk home reminded of who was in charge. Cicero, the Roman statesman, once called crucifixion the cruelest and most disgusting punishment ever meted out by human hands. Romans were forbidden by law to crucify Roman citizens. It was considered too obscene for their own people. They saved it for slaves, for rebels, for foreigners. And in the middle of that, with the nails still going in, with the soldiers still working, with the wood still wet from his own blood, Jesus said this, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Stop and let that land. He is not asking the soldiers to stop. He is not asking them to apologize. He is praying for them while they are killing him. Here's what most people miss. The Greek tense of that sentence is what scholars call an imperfect it suggests. He was not just saying it once. He was saying it again and again and again. Every blow of the hammer. Every fresh tearing of flesh. Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. He was forgiving them in real time. You can almost hear the rhythm of the hammers slowing because the soldiers heard him too. Roman professionals who had crucified hundreds of men. They didn't look up. They were busy dividing his clothes. They had done this so many times they had a system for it. Casting lots for the tunic. Fold the rest into batteries. It was a Friday shift like any other. They had no idea who they were nailing to that wood. That was the first word. Now the second one. Hanging on either side of Jesus were 2 men. The Gospels call them Tetelestai, in Greek, not common thieves. That word in the Roman world meant insurgents, bandits, men who had killed. Tradition gives them names. Dismas on the right, Gestas on the left. For the first few hours, both of them mocked him. Matthew records it. Both of them. They joined in with the crowd. Save yourself, if you are who you say you are. Save us while you are at it. But somewhere in those first hours, something shifted in Dismas. He watched the man in the middle. He listened to the prayer. He saw the way Jesus held his head when the soldiers spat. He saw, maybe, the way the centurion was beginning to look up. Picture yourself standing in that crowd. You can hear Dismas turn his head. And he says to Gestas, "We are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he did something that no one in human history had ever done before. He looked at a dying man, bleeding out beside him, suffocating under his own weight, and he called him a king. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Pay attention to this. He is not asking for healing. He is not asking to come down. He is asking for memory. Just remember me. That's all. Even if it is from the other side of death, just remember I was here. And Jesus turns his head. This is the man whose entire ministry has been about the future, about a coming kingdom, about one day, about a day to come. And for the first time in 3 years of public teaching, he drops the word, one day. Today. Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. The Greek word for paradise is paradeisos. It is not originally a Greek word, it is borrowed from Persian, and in Persian it meant the walled garden of a king, the private garden, the place the king walked in the cool of the evening where only invited guests were allowed. Jesus is telling a dying criminal, today you walk into the king's private garden with me. The only person in all 4 Gospels that Jesus personally guarantees heaven to by name, on the spot, with a deadline of today, is a convicted insurgent dying for crimes he just admitted he was guilty of. That was the second word. Now the third one. His mother is still standing there. She hasn't left. The other disciples have scattered. Peter is somewhere in the city, hating himself. Judas is already dead by his own hand. The 11 men who walked with him for 3 years, only one of them is at the cross, a teenager named John. And Jesus, looking down through the blood running into his eyes, finds his mother in the crowd. He has 30 seconds of breath. He can spend on this, maybe less. To speak, he has to push his body up against the nails in his feet, fill his lungs, and exhale words. He uses it on her. Woman, behold thy son. Then he looks at John. Behold your mother. And from that hour, the Gospel says, the disciple took her into his own home. You watch him do it. You watch a dying son make sure his widowed mother has a place to sleep tonight. This is the last domestic act of his life. He is dying. He is the Son of God. He is in the middle of the most violent 6 hours in human history, and he stops. He stops everything for her. That is the man dying on the middle cross. That is who he was, right to the end. So that is 3 sentences. 3 doors, 1 to his executioners, 1 to a dying criminal, 1 to his mother. And we are not even halfway done. If you have stayed with me this far, do me one favor. Hit the subscribe button. We do this every week, 1 passage, 1 question, 1 walk through Scripture the way it was meant to be heard. And what is coming next is the hardest part of this entire video, because the next thing he says will not sound like him. It will sound like a man broken open. It will be spoken in a language he has not used since he was a child, and it will come out of 3 hours of darkness so thick that Roman historians wrote about it. Stay with me. At 12 noon, the sun went out. Not slowly, not the way the sun fades at the end of a day. The Gospel writers, 3 of them, independently record that at the 6th hour, which was noon by Jewish reckoning, fell over the whole land, and it stayed dark for 3 hours. You are standing on that hill. You are watching the sun go out. You have never seen a darkness like this in your life. This was not a solar eclipse. Eclipses last 7 minutes at most. This lasted 3 hours, and it happened during Passover, when the moon was full, which makes a solar eclipse astronomically impossible. Something else was happening. Tacitus, the Roman historian, writing around the year 116, confirmed in his annals that this crucifixion happened, that Christus, as he calls him, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius, at the hands of the procurator Pontius Pilate. The Roman record agrees with the Gospel record. This is not myth, and Cicero, the same Cicero we mentioned earlier, wrote that crucifixion was so horrifying it should not even be spoken of in polite company. Novels found their own punishment so obscene they were forbidden by law to inflict it on each other. This was the cross. This was the darkness. This was the silence. For 3 hours, he says nothing. 3 hours. Try to imagine that. 3 hours of darkness in the middle of the day. 3 hours of the man on the middle cross saying nothing. 3 hours of his mother standing there. 3 hours of the centurion looking up, and looking up, and looking up. And then, out of the darkness, comes a voice nobody recognizes. If you have ever heard a grown man cry in his mother's language, you know the sound. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. The bystanders thought he was calling for Elijah. They were wrong. He was not speaking Hebrew. He was not speaking Greek. He was not even speaking the formal religious language of his culture. He was speaking Aramaic, the language of the kitchen, the language of the carpenter's shop, the language Mary used when she rocked him to sleep, the language Joseph used when he was teaching him how to plane a piece of wood. And the words mean this: my God, why have you forsaken me? Now pay attention to this, because this is the only sentence in the 7 where he does not call God Father. For 3 years of public ministry, he has called him Father. Every prayer recorded in the Gospels begins the same way. Father, Father, Father. In the garden the night before, Father. At the resurrection of Lazarus, Father. In the upper room, Father. But now, in the darkness, he says, my God, why? The answer is the heaviest theology in the New Testament. For the first time in eternity, for the first time ever, the Son experienced separation from the Father, not in his being, in his suffering. The relationship between the Father and the Son had never been interrupted, not once, not in any of the moments we can imagine. And now it was, because in that moment, the sin of the world was on him. And a holy Father cannot look at sin. So the Father turned his face, and the Son cried out in his mother's language. But here is what almost no one notices. He was quoting a psalm, the first line of Psalm 22, written by King David roughly 1,000 years earlier. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? In the first century, when a rabbi quoted the first line of a psalm, it was understood as a reference to the whole psalm. You did not have to quote the rest. The hearers knew. You said line 1. They recited the rest in their heads. So go and read Psalm 22. Read it tonight, before you sleep. You will not be the same after you do. You will find a description of crucifixion written 1,000 years before crucifixion was invented as a method of execution. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. People stare and gloat over me. I am poured out like water. David wrote that 1,000 years before that hill outside Jerusalem, before the Romans even existed as an empire, before the practice of crucifixion was known to the world. And then, in the second half of Psalm 22, the tone changes. It turns. It ends in triumph. He has not despised the suffering of the afflicted one. From you comes the praise. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. So when Jesus, dying, cries out the first line of that psalm, he is not just expressing despair. He is pointing the entire crowd at that hill and every reader of every gospel for the next 2,000 years to a 1,000-year-old prophecy that was being fulfilled in front of their eyes. The cry of abandonment was also a sermon. The darkest sentence in the Bible was also a footnote pointing forward. He was preaching from the cross with his last conscious sentences. But it gets stranger. Because he had 3 more things to say, he spoke again. 2 words, the shortest sentence of the 7, the only one that named what his body was going through. I thirst. You can almost miss this one. It is so small, so human. After the cosmic abandonment of the previous cry, after 3 hours of darkness, after the language of his mother breaking out of his chest, he says 2 words about his body. But he wasn't asking for water. He was not asking for pity. He was not even asking for mercy. He was finishing a psalm written 1,000 years before he was born. Psalm 69, verse 21. They gave me vinegar for my thirst. A soldier below him hears it. He takes a sponge. He soaks it in the cheap, sour wine the soldiers drank on duty, what the Romans called pasca, and he lifts it up on a stalk of hyssop to his mouth. That detail matters. Hyssop, the same plant the Israelites used in Egypt to paint the blood of the Passover lamb on their doorposts, the plant that marked the homes the angel of death passed over. And now, in the last minutes of the life of the Lamb of God, on the eve of Passover, a Roman soldier, without knowing what he was doing, lifts hyssop to his mouth. The Bible does not waste details like that. That was the 5th word. Now the 6th. He drinks. He tastes the vinegar. And then, with what he has left of his voice, he says one word. In English, we say 3. In Greek, he said 1. Tetelestai, it is finished. Now follow this closely, because this is the part nobody tells you. Tetelestai in Greek is in what grammarians call the perfect passive tense. It doesn't just mean finished, it means finished, and the effect remains finished forever, done, and stays done, completed, and the completion will never be undone. But the word itself was not religious vocabulary. It was a common word in the first century Roman world. You would find it in 3 places. You would find it on a tax receipt, Tetelestai, paid in full, the debt has been settled. You would find it on the ledger of a merchant, Tetelestai, this account is closed, this transaction is complete. And you would find it at the end of a race, Tetelestai, the course has been run, the runner has crossed the line, paid in full, account closed, the race is finished. That is the word he chose. And here is what most people have never been told. Listen carefully. That 6th word, Tetelestai, was not spoken to John. It was not spoken to Mary. It was not spoken to the crowd, or to the centurion, or to the thief beside him. It was not even in that moment spoken to the Father. That word was spoken to the debt itself, to sin, to death, to the powers of darkness watching from somewhere just beyond the visible world. He was looking through the cross, past the soldiers, past the hill, into the unseen place where every claim against every human being who has ever lived was being held. And he said the word the tax collector says when the bill has been paid. Paid, in, full. That was the open loop. That was the sentence not spoken to a person in the crowd. That was the one we said we would come back to. It was a verdict spoken over the cosmos. You are watching the verdict get spoken. You are inside the courtroom of the universe at the moment the gavel comes down, and the universe heard it. Now, think about what that means for a moment, because there is a man who understood this, more than perhaps any other man in modern history. His name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. To German pastor, he died in a Nazi prison camp called Flossenburg on the morning of April 9th, 1945, 3 weeks before the camp was liberated. Stripped of his clothes at dawn, marched to the gallows, hanged for resisting Hitler, the camp doctor who watched him die said he had never seen a man die with such composure. Think about what that takes. Think about what you would have to believe, really believe, to walk that calmly toward a rope. The last recorded words out of Bonhoeffer's mouth, spoken to a fellow prisoner the night before, were these: "This is the end. For me, the beginning of life." A man dying with a sentence already half spoken on the other side of death. The way you die reveals what you have believed your whole life. Bonhoeffer believed Tetelestai. He believed it had been paid in full for him by a man on a hill outside Jerusalem 2,000 years before his own gallows. And so he walked toward his death the way a child walks toward his own front door at the end of a long day. Which brings us to the 7th word. Jesus is almost gone now. He has one breath left, one sentence, and the man who has just declared the cosmos paid in full, who has just settled the debt of every soul that has ever lived, what does he use his last breath for? He prays a bedtime prayer. "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." This sentence is not original. He was quoting Psalm 31, verse 5. And in first-century Jewish homes, that line was something specific. It was the prayer Jewish mothers taught their children to pray before they went to sleep at night. Mary had taught him that prayer when he was a toddler. You can see her doing it. You can see a young Mary kissing a toddler's forehead and teaching him the words. He had said it every night of his childhood, before bed, after his mother kissed him on the forehead. "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." The first prayer he ever learned, and now, dying. At the end of the longest day in human history, he says the prayer Mary first put in his mouth. He died the way every child should die, speaking the prayer his mother taught him, coming home. So there they are, 7 sentences, 6 hours, 1 hill. Before we close, let me give you 3 things to take with you. The first is this: these 7 sentences were not random. They were a sequence. Forgiveness for the soldiers, salvation for the thief, family for his mother, abandonment in the darkness, thirst in his body, victory over the debt, and surrender into the hands of his Father. That is not a list. That is a complete portrait of everything that was happening on that cross, laid out in 7 sentences, in real time, by a dying man. The second is this: every word he spoke was directed to someone. The soldiers below him, the thief beside him, his mother in the crowd, his father in the heavens, the debt itself, his own body, and his own spirit. Which means, and you need to sit with this for a minute, every word he spoke was also, somewhere in there, spoken about you. The forgiveness was for you. The promise of paradise was for you. The verdict of paid in full was for you. You were on that cross with him in a way you have never been on any other cross in human history. You were the reason he stayed. And the third is this: he died the way every child should die, speaking the prayer his mother taught him, coming home. If that does not land somewhere deep, nothing will. So here's my question for you. Out of the 7 forgiveness, paradise, family, abandonment, thirst, finished, home, which one hit you the hardest? Tell me below, and tell me why. I read every comment on these. If this video meant something to you, share it with one person today, someone who needs to hear that the debt was paid in full. Someone who needs to know that there is a king with a private garden and the invitation is still open. He said 7 things from the cross, and the last one was the prayer of a child going home.